Welcome everyone to this new video, and in the last video I show you the final results of this UI project, and today we are actually going to start developing our UI from scratch. So first we will have to create a new empty project in Unity, and this can be either 2D or 3D. I have created a 2D project. Then we will create the necessary folders and files and import the assets. Next, we will start by creating our layout, and we are going to finish this video by creating C# script. The first thing in our asset folder, we need to create one folder, and we will call this folder UI project. So right click, create folder, and name it UI project. Then inside of this folder, we will create another folder and we will name it UI. And we will also create something called panel settings. And this is done by right click, create UI Toolkit, panel setting assets. And we will rename this as UI panel settings. Panel settings is UI Toolkit asset that defines how a UI document is rendered at runtime. Here target display, UI screen or world space, scaling behavior, and much more can be set. But at this point, we will leave it its default properties. Inside of the UI folder, we will create another folder called resources. This folder will contain our assets like images, sounds, and so on. Now we will import our images here. You can download these assets as well as the code in the link below and just drag the images to this folder. For all three background images, we will just set texture type to default and save it. Now we'll go back to our UI folder. We will create something here called a UI document. And this is done by right click, create UI Toolkit, and UI document. And we will name it Ship UI. UI document is Unity component that connects our UI toolkit layout to the scene and tells Unity to render it using a panel settings asset. So it is basically a bridge between our game object and UI toolkit. Now we're going into our scene hierarchy. We will create an empty game object and name it UI. Then just select it and we will add a component called UI document. Here we put our panel settings and source assets. Source asset is ship UI document. Then back in the UI project folder, we have our panel settings and just drag it here. Back in our UI folder, and by double clicking our UI document, ship UI, we open the UI builder. We can start by setting the ship UI UXML in the hierarchy and check this Match Game View checkbox. Your builder is visual editor for creating UI toolkit layouts and styles. Here the biggest part takes the viewport, which is a preview of our UI. Here is also an inspector with the properties of the selected element. Then we have hierarchy tab, here with the structure of our UI. sort of a like UXML tree. Next is library. The library contains all available UI elements we can add. Then we have style sheet. This shows and manages USS files attached to the document. One note for the hierarchy: when the UI document loads our UXML, Unity will automatically create a root visual element for us. This way, the first element we create in UI Builder becomes a child of the root. The root itself is invisible here, and it is not shown, and you cannot edit it manually. This root element is then used in the C# script to access all the other controls we put in the UI Builder. Now we can start with our layout. First, we will create two visual elements. One will be named Space Background, and the second will be named Screen Glass. This is done just by dragging and dropping the visual element. Then right-click and rename it as a Space Background. Then we will repeat this, add another visual element, and name it Screen Glass. Now for a space background, we need to set some properties manually. First, here in the inspector, we will set the position. The position mount will be absolute. This means we have removed this control from the normal Flexbox layout, and we will position it manually. Next, we set the size to 100% width and height. Now you can see that this visual element takes the whole screen. Now we will create our first USS class selector. USS styles class selector are reusable styling rules that starts with a dot. This applies styles to any control that has that class. And this way we can reuse the same styling across multiple elements without styling each element separately. We just define the class once and apply it whenever we need it. We can import our styles here from an already existing USS file, or we can create a new one. And this is what we are going to do now. We will create a new USS. Then navigate to our UI folder, name the file as ship UI styles, and save it. We can remove this root. Just one note, when working in a UI builder, to save your current progress, you can just press Ctrl+S key. To create our first style selector, we type here the name of the style selector. The first one will be called Background Stars. You type its name without a dot. It is automatically added as you start typing. Then by pressing Enter, the selector is created. We can select this style selector and set some properties. We will set in position mode to absolute. Size will also be 100% width and 100% height. This style selector is then applied to the screen glass visual element just by dragging and dropping it. The same can be also done here in the inspector by typing the selector name. We will also set one property manually, the background color. In background color, just type this color code. And of course, you can see that the screen glass visual element also takes up the whole screen. Don't just forget to save your work from time to time with Ctrl+S. We will create few more visual elements that will hold images. Then I'm going to explain what's going on. The first one will be dropped here, and we will name it stars for A. Apply the background star selector on it. And now we will manually add an image to this visual element. In background, image. And search for the stars for image in our assets. We can just duplicate this image and rename it to stars for B. Then we repeat this process 2 more times. The second one will be called stars mid A, and it will hold an image stars mid. Duplicate this image and rename the new one to stars mid B. We need to repeat this process 1 more time. Duplicate the previous image, rename the new one to stars near A, and add it to an image called stars near. Duplicate the last image 1 more time and name it stars near B. At the moment we can't see star images because I made a mistake. In the screen glass visual element, I forgot to set transparency. We can set it to maybe 180. And now the stars in the background are visible. Now you might ask why we put 6 star images and why we have 2 same background images. These images will be used for parallax in the background. Parallax is a visual effect where objects at different distances move at different speeds. It creates an illusion of a depth in a 2D scene. Objects further away will move slower, and near objects will move faster. Our parallax implementation consists of 3 layers: far, mid, and near. And each of these layers covers the full screen and has 2 copies, A and B, for seamless looping. Image will scroll vertically, every layer at different speeds. We are using 2 copies per layer just because one image alone would scroll off the screen and leave an empty gap. To create an infinite scrolling, we need one image currently visible and one image right behind it, ready to replace it. Now we can move to screen glass visual element and create few children in it. We will create another visual element in it and rename it as the main panel. Then we need one more style class selector. We can name it main panel. Now we can set its properties. The first one would be flex. We can leave shrink at 1 as it is, and we put grow to 1. What exactly is this flex? It's a property that controls how an element behaves inside a flex container, how it takes space relative to its siblings. Flex grow controls how much an element will expand if there is extra space. Flex shrink controls how much an element shrinks if there isn't enough space. Flex basis defines the starting size before growing and shrinking is applied. Flex direction defines the main layout direction of children inside of the flex container. And flex wrap controls whether children are allowed to move onto a new line when there isn't enough space. Now we can continue with putting margins in spacing to 50 pixels. We also need a border. Border color can be put to this hex value. Border width will be 3 pixels and the border radius 25 pixels. Apply the main selector to the main visual element and we got this borderline here. We need one more visual element inside of the main panel. Rename it as an upper panel. Set its flex shrink and grow properties to 1 and its grow direction to row. Maybe now it's a good time to save the project once again. In the upper panel, we put a visual element and call it ship. It will also have flex shrink set to 1 and flex grow to 1. Now we need to set the alignment property. We set align items to the center and justify content also to the center. Size can stay as it is. In the ship container, we are going to put the last visual element named ship image. Its flex shrink property is 1 and flex grow is 0. We need to create 2 more style class selectors. One we will call a ship. Its align items and justify content properties will be centered. We also set its size to 500, so 500 pixels for both width and height. Then the background will be an image. The image we will use here is named shape. We apply this selector to the ship image visual element, and now we can see our ship image on the screen panel. The last selector we will create in this video will be called ship shields. Its align items and justify content properties will be also centered. And the same size is for its size. 500 pixels for both width and height. But here the image will be ship with shields. In some later video, we will use that image when we will activate the shields. Before we leave UI Builder, we will just adjust the background a bit. Select Space Background and in Background Property, select Color Alpha Channel to 255 so we have a fully black background. And in Screen Glass, adjust the color transparency to 210. We can now save our work and close UI Builder. Back in Unity, we create a C# script and name it Ship UI. Then we just need to add this script as a component to our UI game object. Then open this script in the code editor. I will paste the code here and then I'll explain what is happening. You can download the script from the link below. First, we need to import namespaces. The first one is the standard Unity namespace, which enables core Unity features. The second one enables UI Toolkit elements and events. In our Ship UI class, first we are creating references to our visual elements we created in UI Builder. The first one is root. Root is a reference to the whole UI document. It's the one which is added automatically by Unity and not visible in UI Builder. It holds all the other controls we add in our UI Builder. We have also created variables for all other visual elements we added to our UI. Here are variable for scrolling timers, used for Parallax, each timer variable for one Parallax layer, since every layer will move at its own speed. We also have a variable that holds the height of the background image, and then also for a ship speed. In one enable function, variables we created are connected to the UI elements we put in UI Builder. For that, we use the query method queue. First, we get our root element. Then, via this root, we can access all other UI elements. Update function runs every frame and it calls the function, then recalculates scrolling and applies new translate values. This makes background animation continuous. Set ship speed function is the core of our parallax effect. Here we are setting different speeds for each background layer. Scroll layer function is called for every layer separately. It just scrolls each layer independently. In the scroll layer function, we are accumulating scrolling distance over time, and it moves A and B layer variants with layer height offset between them. Now back in Unity, we can try what we have created by pressing the play button. We see that our background moves, creating an illusion of a moving ship. It's visible that each background layer has its own speed. The nearest layer with bigger stars move faster than layers with smaller stars. That's all for this video. We have covered some basics of visual elements, images, and parallax. And in the next video, we're gonna start working with the buttons. So see you there.